That long-awaited day finally came. The Soviet Union reached the Korean Peninsula first and placed itself above the 38th parallel, while the United States remained below the 38th parallel, erasing the shadows of Japan. Politicians and independence activists within and outside Korea began planning for a better Korea in the future. However, the joys of liberation did not last for long. During the Moscow Conference of Foreign Ministers, the conference participants agreed on an interim government, but on the condition of a trusteeship. This news generated shockwaves across Korea. To Koreans, trusteeship was like a return to being a Japanese colony. And anti-trusteeship rallies spread nationwide. However, on January 2nd, communists suddenly did an about-face, showing their support for the trusteeship. The Soviet Union was working behind the scenes. At that time, it had begun communization of North Korea. Stalin had planned to infiltrate communists into the government sponsored by the United States-Soviet Union Joint Commission and have communists take key positions. While there was a split of factions based on supporting or opposing the trusteeship south of the 38th parallel, in Pyongyang, communization was taking place in perfect order according to Soviet plans. On March 20, 1946, the first meeting of the U.S.-Soviet Union Joint Commission took place. The Soviet Union was of the position that only those who agreed to the Moscow Agreement could participate in the meeting. But the United States, advocating the freedom of speech, claimed that any party could participate regardless of their stances on the trusteeship. There was no room for compromise. Eventually, on May 8, the Joint Commission entered indefinite recess. The U.S. Army government and all South Korean factions became involved in trying to gain the initiative. The United States' new strategy was to create a centrist faction made up of central rightist Kim Gyu-shik and central leftist Yoh Un-hyung. However, the centrist faction was very weak and had no great influence in the nation's political stage. With the United States sponsoring a moderate group and ignoring the rightists, Syngman Rhee and Kim Gu adopted opposing stances to the U.S. Army government. Rhee called for at least an interim government within South Korea first. Kim Gu continued anti-trusteeship activities and attempted to create a government separate from the U.S. Army government. Communists changed tactics and began attacking the U.S. Army government. The Communist Party embarked on a new tactic after being hit by the counterfeit money incident. As we have seen, while North Korea was undergoing communization smoothly during 1946, South Korea was paralyzed by chaos from different factions. In the spring of 1947, the United States and the Soviet Union agreed to reconvene the Joint Commission. Just like the first meeting, both the United States and the Soviet Union could not seek common ground over who could attend the meeting. Eventually, the United States gave up on the Moscow Agreement and passed the Korea issue to the United Nations. The United Nations decided the general election encompassing South and North Korea under UN supervision. However, the Soviet Union denied the United Nations Temporary Commission on Korea entry into North Korea. Subsequently, the United Nations determined elections in the only part of the country it had access to, South Korea. The Soviet Union and communists from both Koreas generated conflict in order to stop the elections. They called for the withdrawal of all foreign troops and demanded that Koreans be allowed to solve their own issues. However, with North Korea now a communist country, this was a ploy to turn the entire peninsula into a communist country. In the midst of violent conflicts between South Korean rightists and South North Korean leftists about the election under UN surveillance, South Korean centrists with rightist Kim Gu changed their stance against the election. They thought that the separation of two Koreas would be set by the election. In March 1948, North Korea unilaterally announced an all-Korean social organization conference to oppose the elections. Kim Gu and Kim Gyu-shik headed northward, a sincere attempt to keep Korea from splitting into two. However, the conference only consisted of criticizing South Korea's elections. There was no such thing as negotiation. The Soviet Union was behind this conference. 1 week prior to the conference taking place, the Soviet Union conveyed what to cover and what kind of document to prepare in a written order. In the end, the Soviet Union and North Korea nullified the sincere attempt to prevent the separation of Korea. On May 10, 1948, the UN-observed elections took place. It was Korea's first ever election in its history, and that too an election that was fair and direct and promised anonymity. Voter turnout hit 95.5%, and 198 members were elected. On May 31st, the Constitutional Assembly was called into session. On July 17, the Korean Constitution was proclaimed, filled with ideals. Constitution of the Republic Korea. Article 1. The Republic of Korea shall be a democratic republic. Article 2. The sovereignty of the Republic of Korea shall reside in the people, and all state authority shall emanate from the people. On July 20, an indirect election from the National Assembly elected Syngman Rhee as the nation's inaugural president. On August 15, 1948, the independent nation all wanted was born with the name of the Republic of Korea.
이날의 평양을 한잡아진 대한민국 정부가 국민에서 49년을 두고 사랑으로 꿈꾸는 희생적으로 투쟁하여 있다가 이에 나타나는 것입니다.
The Republic of Korea got acknowledgement from the United Nations in December 1948 that its government was the sole legitimate government of all of the Korean Peninsula. Following the establishment of the Republic of Korea, about 20 days later, on September 9, North Korea also established itself as a nation. North Korea had already chosen a country name for itself and passed a draft version of its constitution in April 1948 and waited for the establishment of South Korean government to evade the responsibility of separation. The newly formed Republic of Korea did not have everything. However, for the first time in the history of the Han people, the nation was a nation where sovereignty belonged to the people. People could freely make use of their talents, and the nation guaranteed due rewards to those who worked hard. The start of the nation was bumpy with some imperfections and flaws. However, these imperfections and flaws could be cured, and the nation has been on the right historical development path. This nation is none other than the Republic of Korea.